I, for one, find a lot of peace when I'm just out in nature, and I feel it as an active energy flowing through me. Whether it's plants, whether it's the sea. I am from Chennai also. Angela, I'm going to start with you. Welcome to the Jaipur Literature Festival, to your first session.
Yes.
Yeah. You are actually in the land of Ayurveda, right? And Ayurveda is a holistic system that believes in the balance of the mind, body, and spirit. And a lot of Ayurvedic medicine comes from herbs and plants, and it's natural drugs is what they say, right? So the book that you've written, I saw the PDF. It was very interesting. You know, the healing, what is it? The Renaissance, healing plants of Renaissance Florence, right? Your book, the initial lead up to the introduction of the plants is about how the Medici family, they patronized actually the documentation of the plants, the drawing of the plants, the illustrations, the accuracy of actually making records of those plants. It was fascinating to just go through, to scroll through the entire Medici family and what each one sort of contributed to this. It's like it's like a tomb, you know, of research, valuable research. I wonder, before I get into the plants, Angela, when you actually came upon this, right, and you started exploring and discovering, what did you feel like? I mean, you know, what was it must have been quite a magical journey for you, right? And start looking at things again a second time. Oh my God, I've passed that by, but wow, this has these properties. Did that happen to you?
Yes, I mean, everybody knows about the Medici. Everybody knows that they patronized the art and architecture. They made a lot of money and they spent it.
From the 14th to 17th century.
Absolutely.
Right.
But hardly anybody knows that they also patronized herbal medicine. It was Cosimo I, the Grand Duke.
Hold it up here, so yeah.
The Grand Duke, who actually patronized medicine in the University of Pisa. He set up a faculty for medicine, which of course was herbal. And he got the best botanist who could find, Luca Ghini, who said, I'll come on condition that you let me plant a big botanical garden with every botanical herb I can possibly think of. And Cosimo said, yeah, okay, anything you want. So Luca Ghini was able to teach his students, this is the plant, take them out into the botanical garden and say, this plant here is good for this, and this is what it looks like.
Right.
Because before, doctors didn't know what plants they were using. They just used to go to the pharmacist, the spezzeria, and just say, make me a mixture to treat this or that or the other.
Right.
And they had no idea what was in it.
Right.
So this was a big change.
Okay, and it's all been documented. So, I mean, when you actually kind of chronicled plants that you have selected, or
yes,
yeah.
I mean, there were these lists of plants which they used, and I was able to
identify and then sort of
to find these lists of plants and choose the ones who I could actually translate into English and find the Latin binomial of, because some of them I couldn't do that.
Right.
And plants which we use today.
So, Angela, I mean, you know, some are quite right out of, you know, your kitchen. We use them, I was reading that and a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so which would you tell us that is a must that we need in our kitchens? I know there's a climate difference, but yeah.
Well, I've just been discussing these plants with Yuvan, and he recognized all the plants in my book, except for one, which was the dragon tree.
I was going to say that too, yes. Right, exactly.
It's the most extraordinary tree, but it only grows in the Canaries and in one island off the coast of Yemen. Wow. Nowhere else. So, actually,
But how did it reach Florence for them to record it?
Well, they would
The travelers.
import the bark from,
Right,
you know.
Right, okay.
There were all these boats traveling around the oceans and bringing things back, and they were using them.
Yeah. No, but so can you just tell us which plants are a must that we must have in our kitchen?
Well, I have to have aloe vera
Aloe vera.
in
all
my
right.
kitchen in case I burn myself or somebody else burns
So
themselves.
it's great for burns, okay.
Chamomile, in case
Soothing.
you can't go to sleep or you have a stomach upset or something.
Right. Okay.
It's
Okay. Okay.
good.
Fennel.
Yes.
Okay, not that much, all right. We have a lot of fennel in India. It's a great digestive for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to have nutmeg, but not because I'm using it medicinally. I'm not. I'm using it as a spice.
Right. Okay. So do you have what would I say, like a greenhouse outside your kitchen where you have an array of herbs and
No, I
seeds?
haven't got a greenhouse, but I do have herbs growing outside in my garden, yes.
Right. Okay. You know, I remember I had gone to this was a hotel that a long time back we'd gone to Israel when one was still going to Israel, and for their teas, you know, most floors have a kettle and tea bags, and they had little pots where you would pluck the peppermint and put it and have fresh, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and I
Yeah.
thought, wow, that's the way to do it. Not go and, you know, get Twinings to get their numbers go up, but actually have the fresh, you know, whether it's chamomile also, or hibiscus, or, you know, there's so many of these flower teas now.
Hibiscus we don't have growing in England,
Right.
but I've got dried hibiscus in my cupboard.
So do I. But yeah. Okay. So, and Angela, so, I mean, has that changed your perspective, you know, when you're walking through, when you're coming to a new country? Is this your first visit to India?
No.
You've
I've
come.
been 24 times to India.
And which is your favorite place as far as herbs and plants and nature is concerned?
I think the botanical garden in Kerala,
In Kerala.
it's really amazing. It's
Really?
a botanical garden which has no border, no fence, and at night all the wild animals can come in, including the elephants.
So you mean it's on the periphery of a forest?
Yes.
Wow.
And they haven't destroyed any of the forest. They've just planted in between the forest trees.
That's amazing.
It's really wonderful.
Right, okay.
And they have research labs there where they're working on plants which they can maybe make into something they can sell to try to raise money, because obviously they don't have enough of it.
Right. Okay.
It's very, very nice. It's in the foothills of the Western Ghats.
Western Ghats. All right. Okay. Thank you. Talking about botanical gardens, I'm remembering the banyan tree in the Krishnamurti area. And Yuvan, as I was saying, I grew up in Chennai. And my fondest memories really are, so I used to live in Santho. And you had Foreshore Estate. And for me, the sea was a living, moving presence in my life. And I didn't notice the marshlands at that point. But now, looking back, yes, there is a strip that before you go to Adyar, I don't know what state it is in now, but it was pretty marshy then. You're lucky, you're really lucky to be there. And so, you know, your growing up or your formative years in the Krishnamurti campus and the nature-based learning that you went through, it was not just learning about plants, I mean, the outside world, it was also very soothing for your inner world, right? Would you like to tell us a little about that?
Krishnamurti schools, there are 7 in India, and it's a very beautiful philosophy. A lot of people find it a little intangible, but this
Rishi Valley is also one of them,
Rishi
right?
Valley, Valley School, Sayadri, they are located in really beautiful places. And some of the things this philosopher, this man said was, question every answer. be a light.
Question every answer.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Be a light unto yourself. No guru, God, organized religion can lead you to the truth. Truth is a pathless land and things like that.
Right.
And we had a lot of our classes happened outside, and the campus was a forest at the center of the city. We had about 80 species of trees. I was part of surveying them with a teacher, and
And the most magnificent was the banyan tree.
yeah, the banyan tree.
Which
yes.
is what, 300 years old?
So opposite, the school's area has changed now, but opposite it there was the Theosophical Society, which has a banyan tree, is about 600 years old. But based on its girth, we could say about 200, 300 years old. What was inside the school?
Okay.
Actually, home was a very sort of tormentuous, sort of turbulent place, and what nature allowed was very basically get out of one's mind and to just feel wonder for the Indian pitta which comes during the monsoon. And Indian pitta is a bird. It's called the 6 o'clock bird. You get it in Rajasthan. It calls at 6 a.m. in the morning, 6 p.m. in the evening.
Right.
It goes tweet you. No.
No, do
it's
that,
better.
please.
It's better.
And through
I
the
used
year?
to mimic better when I was younger.
But it's through the year or monsoon?
No, so during the monsoon.
Monsoon.
So it lives in the Himalayan foothills, and during winter it comes down and goes up. It doesn't cross.
Give it once again.
Tweet you. Okay. Bird sounds better.
Lovely.
What I also recognized now was that nature allowed for metaphors to change the meaning of suffering in one's mind. Later on, whether it be, for instance, metamorphosis of a moth or a beetle, or the work that, let's say, decomposes to millipedes and pill bugs.
Right. Or a tree decaying and then new life coming out of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
These were. I realized that metaphors are a survival need for us. We go through things in our lives and we make meaning of them, and often within the human realm, we get very static metaphors to make sense of what's going on within our psyche.
Right.
While nature allows for transformative, dynamic things. So one of the things, I had for many years, complex PTSD, and there was, I know a point where I saw a beetle emerge from its pupa, and it was doing what we call a detritivore, and it was changing shit into something fertile. And for me, hey, you can actually do that with suffering. And what would it mean to actually leave dung beetles into your head?
Wow. Wow. No, sorry, I'm going to get a little personal. How did you make that shift inside you personally? You had gone through shit also.
Yes.
How did you make sense of that? How did you give that meaning?
One of the things which very spontaneously happen is that the quality of observation you bring to what we are calling the external world simultaneously projects inward. So there is a observation on a spectrum. So meanings sort of interchange.
Is it kind of mirroring the reality?
A mirror implies separation.
Okay.
And there is a quality of attention in which there is no self and the other, and that was that is easily perceptible in a non-human society, and that was really important for me to have in childhood. Otherwise, I'd be, I don't know, some drunkard or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that happened, and we have you here to share, and so delving back on your own personal experience, you realize the value of, I keep saying that today, we were just talking about it coming here, that the biggest, we don't have COVID, but the other pandemic is really about anxiety, mental health and anxiety amongst young people today. And I'm so happy that the stigma of going to a therapist is slowly being removed here in India. Otherwise, if you said, I think you need help, they say, well, I'm not mad. But now people are willing to, okay, I need to see a counselor, or, But if you, opened up the walls that we've put, the physical brick and mortar, and made our classrooms, and instead took them out into nature, like you did in Krishnamurti, would that help? Because the world has changed, There is a lot of more stress. Would that help children cope better?
Yeah. So I work a lot with, I work with children 2.5 years old up till, college students. And I think we have something called the action pedagogy. And what we look at is, I think, central to that is not to look at the individual is a social construct.
Right.
And often structures, what they do is they tend to push us into a corner of agency means some form of consumption. Okay, let's say we are teaching climate change. Okay, use a cloth bag. Doesn't matter one bit. So a core part of the action pedagogy is engaging with structures. I came with a bunch of, we've engaged with so many campaigns, across India, and children have been a major part of it. And if I might just say a few place names, for instance, Zorba, Chhattisgarh, Niyamgiri in Odisha, Thoothukudi in Tamil Nadu. All of these are campaigns we have deeply engaged with and with children. Well, one of the things, the commonalities between these spaces I said was that, one of the names you see here made those places bleed and broke them beyond repair. And that's the thing with engaging with structures. We are complicit contained within multiple layers. And we buy stuff from Amazon. It's a way of seeing which does not split the social, psychological, political, and the ecological. Yeah.
So you're talking about a consciousness then, a deeper consciousness. Campaigns, today you talk about campaigns, school campaigns, etc. And honestly, what I've seen, it doesn't move beyond make these posters, have this jingle, this song, right? But to actually get them, you're talking about making shifts in consumption, transforming, the way they look at things, no?
No. So what we consume or don't consume, it's nice. It's nice to sort of practice in our lives. We buy something from some brand, doesn't mean a thing.
Huh.
The approach to, I think the approach to real behavioral change, value change, is direct engagement. For instance, recently I worked with a group in Assam on the Holangapar Gibbon Sanctuary, right now threatened with coal mining. Again, I think the person doing that, the name is right here. But the issue is not to look at ourselves, because that's what these large powers, the mining corporations, want us to do. The issue is about not seeing oneself as an individual, but and seeing one's real strength as engaging with larger structures.
Okay. No, but when you sing larger structures, are you talking about the larger natural, the planet, or is it the institutions?
The political, the institutional.
Okay.
So very simply, let's say we're talking about waste.
Right.
It's not about what I throw in the dustbin or not. It's about, okay, I have an apartment complex. Is there a system in place? So to be able to transcend the self.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you. So, they talk about actually that our body also is an ecosystem, right? And in fact, in our Indian chakra system, there are the heart chakra. For me, green is one of the most soothing colors. It's something, and when I later learned about the chakras, there's these 7 major chakras for your healing. The green is supposed to be for the heart, and it is the energy of love and compassion, And then the throat, they say, is creative energy. It's light blue. It's peace. It's the sea. I'm just wondering why we are forgetting all these. This is ancient wisdom that has been in our land. There's stories around this. Why are we forgetting all these things? And now I don't know. It's like we're scrambling around for answers when they're all right there, right? So, Angela, I wanted to ask you. In terms of you've been writing about plants, and you're a naturalist, right? And you've been exploring. You're being modest here.
Something like that.
Something like that. Okay. So, I mean, have you come across any myths or any, things around plants that could be relevant today in the form of storytelling to young people, to adults also love stories?
Well, there are lots of plants which have a calming effect, which you can use quite safely rather than having to take pharmaceutical drugs.
Right, right. And they would be, like you've mentioned, chamomile.
Chamomile is
sage.
one. Sage. Passiflora.
Okay.
Hops.
Do we have that here?
You probably don't
Hops?
have hops in
Yeah.
India, but you probably do have passiflora and chamomile, yes.
Okay.
Passiflora is really good. Yes. I mean, drinking these kind of teas is much better than taking pharmaceutical drugs.
So would I say that you don't visit a doctor ever? Are you your own
Well, I
sort of-
have been known to go to the doctor.
You have been known, sorry, too?
I have been known to go to a doctor.
And for what? What is it that...
I have also been to see an Ayurvedic doctor
Right.
on 3 different occasions in India when my health had been completely ruined by an allopathic doctor who gave me a really bad antibiotic.
Yeah, and it had its side effects, and I think
Really
we've all
nearly
gone through that.
destroyed
Yes.
me. And I was amazed every time this Ayurvedic doctor, by taking the 6 pulses,
yes.
was able to tell exactly what
Where
was
the
wrong with
imbalance
me,
was, yes.
and would give me these little pills that just contained herbs, which always worked. But I
Right.
know nothing about Ayurveda.
Right.
I just know that if you find a really good Ayurvedic doctor, he can cure anything.
Absolutely, in fact, yeah.
Really, really impressive. But I don't even know which herbs they used or anything. But I have to say that when we were talking together, you knew of practically all the plants which I talk about in my book, because they all grow here.
Right. What about you, Yuvan? What's your medical treatment? You just go out and
No. I try not to go to the doctor. I'm prone to kidney issues. I have a sort of genetic kidney condition.
Okay.
So I've started. So there's something called the devil's thorn. You find it a lot in some parts of Rajasthan. It's called Tribulus terrestris.
Okay.
So I have that powder,
Huh.
which when a stone starts forming, I get a sense, and there's a sort of itch in my urethra. So I drink that, and you can feel it
Dissolving.
Actually.
Amazing.
And then we
Amazing.
also have something called the pulapu in Tamil, which I forget the scientific name, which is also useful. Yeah, that's something I often use.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I also personally go to an Ayurvedic retreat near Coimbatore. I try and do it once a year. But whether I've got issues or it's just a cleanse, a detox. But, I just wanted to zoom out and get the larger picture where all of us are aware. It's like impending doom, climate change, the temperatures changing everywhere, forest fires, etc., etc. And yet we're just still talking, right? Yuvan, what would your answer be, that we start working with young people, young minds, or is it going to be too late?
Yeah, I think it's a very large question what you've asked, and if you look at the history of Indian jurisprudence, we have Aruna Roy ma'am here, who after 10 years of work got the RTI Act.
Absolutely.
Good laws came when people worked like that, or when nature came and whacked us on the nose. By ourselves, I don't think, I mean like larger systems, very rare. For instance, most recently, there were the Wayanad landslides.
That's
Decades
right.
ago, Madhav Gadgil said, make these areas no-go zones. They need protection. There's going to be landslides. After the landslides came, however, there was the eco-sensitive area notification.
Right.
So sometimes I feel, in Earth Transform, Peter Frankopan ends with this. Last year I was in conversation with him. He says, I don't think we're going to do anything. The bad things are going to happen where we're like, oh my God, we got to do something, and we take radical action. Unfortunately, that's been the pattern. I'm not endorsing it, obviously, yeah.
But is that, someone says that nature strikes back. It's nature's way of rebalancing because we are not listening as human beings. We're just plundering, if I may use the verb plunder. And I've been told also that the whole coastline of California, etc., it's going to get changed in the next 10 years. And it's almost like someone has been prophetic and then you're watching it happen. You all feel helpless, right?
This has been, in fact, the history. One of my important mentors and friends, Robert McFarlane, his new book is coming out in May, and he starts with the Epic of Gilgamesh, where two hubristic men go and destroy a forest and bring about the end of that civilization. This is what? How old is it? 4,000 years old?
Yeah.
About 4,000 years old. And this has been the repeated pattern. However, with respect to climate change, I think climate is a very large, global phenomenon. If we can shift the lens, and a lot of fossil fuel companies, mining companies like to talk about climate because they have a carbon fetish, because then you can mine lithium.
Right.
You can mine tungsten in Melur, Madurai, which yesterday people's protest won. You can techno-fix climate, but you make it about water, you make it about biodiversity, then you have to engage locally, you have to imagine totally differently. I think it's important also to move away from the climate lens in order to find agency in ourselves locally.
Can you explain that? Move away from the climate lens.
Perspective. So, what I mean is...
it seems so large, you say, what can I do?
So climate is measured by a 30-year average.
Okay.
All the Indians can do all the right things. If the US and the UK screw up, we can't do anything. However, for our local issues, and often what we suffer by is through issues which are not, climate is really a risk amplifier. It does not have a form of its own. It's a ghost which sort of possesses existing problems. You take, for instance, port building in Tamil Nadu. Causes erosion. Climate change speeds up ocean currents, causes erosion faster. Problem is port building.
Right.
Problem is mining. I really believe in what the anthropologist Jason Hickel said. It's the time for degrowth. It's a time for
That's an interesting
Yes,
term.
absolutely.
Angela, do you want to add to that?
Yes, well, I've been part of an anti-mining campaign for the last 50 years, and we haven't achieved anything.
Haven't achieved anything, okay.
No, we go to their AGMs and we ask awkward questions about how the mining companies are destroying the environment and destroying the lives of the people who live in those environments. And they just give us whiffle, waffle, piffle, boffle, cotton wool, and everything carries on.
So, you spoke about degrowth, so it's like a dismantling of structures. I'm just wondering, we keep talking about migration as being one of the issues in India. Is it time for us to go back to being an agrarian society, or is it just...
That's never going to happen.
Never going to happen?
No,
Maybe, but there are a lot of people now wanting to shift back to, there are not villages, but retreats. They want to go back and live simpler lives, a slower pace of life.
Yes, but we need to look at making cities more livable, because that's where the majority of people now live.
Yeah, but Angela, that's subjective. Someone thinks a skyscraper being on the penthouse on the 36th floor, I've reached that success, right? So, how are we going to get there?
I don't know. But there are places in Germany where they've built entire cities where there are no cars.
Right.
Everyone has to use a
Walk
bicycle or walk
bicycle.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Some places they try. But
I think where we need to get, we don't have a vision of. The place we need to get as a
So
people,
it's not
as a
like
community.
going back. We're going forward,
We're
but
going
where
forward.
are we going? Yeah.
It's misty. We don't know. We know what is not.
Right.
So one of the big things spoken of in the climate discourse is solution. Solution is a chemical metaphor, which is to make, vanish, to dissolve, to eradicate almost. I think a more useful metaphor from chemistry is suspension, as Donna Haraway said, to stay with the trouble.
Right.
And in facing these realities very deeply,
But
there will
nothing
be a
will
path
remain.
ahead.
Nothing will remain static, right?
Yeah, there will be movement forward, but not from a point of a solution, not from wanting to make things vanish, because they are not. So I think the path forward is away from the word solution, and we cannot imagine that yet. We can
Okay.
just hold hands and walk. Yeah.
So your book, Yuvan, intertitle, I mean, it's a metaphorical, it's, I didn't know that it was actually that line that comes in with low tide and it gets, So your intertidal thing, I mean, how is it, you've been in now Chennai for how many years? You've been you've grown up, 26
grew up
years
in
now,
Chennai, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Has it been changing visibly in front of you?
See,
The coastline and...
Chennai is interesting because the concept of wasteland, yesterday, day before, Philip Marsden's book, there's a chapter on peat, and there people drain the swamps. He writes about it. That happened in Chennai. People saw the urban sprawl grew, beginning from changing the imagination of people and how you look at land. So marshland were actually, which are in the floodplains of rivers, where water percolates down, gets...
And that's the drainage part of the...
Yeah, that's part of the drainage, and that's also an ecosystem and a livelihood. In Tamil, I speak Tamil, there's a word called porambokku. If somebody knows Tamil, it's a bad word. Hello, sir. Okay. So if somebody cuts you off on the road or something, you'll be like, poda porambokku. No,
I know Paityakari.
So, okay. No, that's different. Porambokku is actually a word for wetland. It became a bad word. And it began with the British because these commons, wetland commons, could not be taxed. Who will you tax? Everybody uses it.
Right.
And so it changed with the sort of shifting of language, shifting of imagination, and then you no longer perceive it. So that you see very active in Chennai. You take, for instance, I'm sorry I'm using bad words. They're not really bad, but you take some of them. Muttal, Madayan, Mudan. These are actually names of people who take care of wetlands. They open the sluice gates. They build the bunds. Those are the names we use now to speak derogatorily of each other. So much bad language has its genesis in hydrology.
Really?
Which then shows you now why the city is disastrously flooding every 2 years.
Bangalore also, because, so, and they've also built over the drainage everywhere. There is no, I mean, we keep talking about the colonial rule that, thank God, that's over. But they were a little smarter in the way they built our cities, right? There was proper drainage and... Oh, you're looking at the colonial...
What?
I don't think Angelo...
Well, there's one place in England where they have done it properly. That's Oxford.
Right.
Where they have flood meadows. So when it rains a lot, the meadows flood, and people normally will travel through the meadows to get to the center of the city.
Right.
But one day they will be told they've got to wear boots up to here. One day they'll be told they've got to wear boots up to here.
Okay.
To get through the flood meadows. But only in Oxford. And guess why? Money.
So they built over natural drainage lanes and pathways?
They just created a big area that could flood so that the city itself wouldn't flood.
Oh, they've directed the water there.
Yeah.
Right.
But, other places couldn't afford to put aside all this land in the same way. It always boils down to money, doesn't it?
It does. So, Trika, I mean, we've got a little time before Q&A. I love the caption of our session, writing nature, reading nature. Yeah? And Yuvan, you've got, it's a lovely book. I recommend everyone buy it. Meditations in the forest, around by the ocean, there are many of them. The thing of reading nature, we spoke about that there's no sense, no degree of separation. where you're flowing, you're one with it, right? How does one reach that space? It's a space in your head, right?
You know, the post-human hydrofeminist Astrid Neyman says, water allows you transcorporeality, which means whatever ideologies we have as individuals, it's constantly boring holes. We are river, we are part of the water cycle. And to be in touch with it, you know, I've done this with children. If you know the names of 50 plants around, your perception of the landscape and of yourself is profoundly changed. And
By just knowing the names.
by just knowing, because a name is a thumbtack. Naming is a political
Gives it an
act.
identity then.
Yes,
huh?
you are giving something space to reside in the mind. I'm not saying, you know 100 names and it's wonderful, but to be in touch.
Absolutely.
And to have a practice of observation. Each of us have our practices of observation.
Yeah.
Things enter our perception, and there are things which we have conditioned to sort of completely blind spot. And the work is there in order to have this sense of oneness with other life. Yeah.
Yes, it's really important in schools for children to have some area where there are plants growing, either plants that produce food, for example, and for the children to participate in planting the seeds and seeing the plants growing and recognizing the plants. This makes a huge difference to them. This is starting to happen in quite a few English schools
I was going to ask
now.
you that. Is that happening there?
Yeah, it's starting to happen in several English schools. I mean, for example, my daughter has a vegetable garden in her school.
Huh.
And after school, she has an after-school club where the children come and work in the garden. And then in autumn, they pick all the fruits of their labors and take it to a local market to sell. And then they give the money which they've raised to an organization that is cooking meals for homeless people.
How wonderful. How wonderful.
So this kind of thing is, it goes beyond education. It's much more important than just learning the regular subjects.
Yeah, which is just literacy, nothing
But
beyond that.
she also has an area in the school where there are trees, and the autistic children love to be amongst these trees.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They become very calm and happy. Oh, he's saying 10.
No, that's all right. There is 10 minutes left. Please finish what you're saying.
They are happy to be in that environment and to pick up things off the ground, leaves,
Right.
feathers, things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're tranquil and happy, contented.
I mean, I think nature's your best teacher about the cycle of life, right? That
Yeah.
nothing is permanent, but then life renews itself. To know that tomorrow is going to be another day, and
But I want people to grow plants that they can use as medicine again. I mean, almost everybody has got a balcony
yes.
or a window ledge or something where they can grow a few plants, even if they haven't got a garden.
Right. And actually, I hope Angela's book has arrived, because it's a lovely
I hope
sort
so
of-
too.
She's actually detailed, there's a drawing, illustration of each plant, and she's written details about what the uses are, the medicinal uses, how you can use it. So if it's here, it would be great if people could pick it up, Angela. Yeah?
Yeah.
And the thing about plants is that you can use every part of it, right? The flower, the fruit, the leaves, the
Well,
root.
it depends on the plant.
Yeah.
Some plants you can use the whole plant. Other plants you just use the root.
The root
or
or the
you
bark.
just use the petals, or you just use the bark. Like cinchona, the
Like your
quinine plant, you
dragon
just
tree,
use the
yeah.
bark.
Yeah.
Depends. Or you just use the seeds.
True.
Or you just use the leaves. Some you boil in water, some you
In
use
fact,
in a different way.
seeds is something everyone's eating these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sunflower seeds, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds. It's become very fashionable. It's like, upping up your nutrition.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
eat a lot of seeds.
Yeah?
Yeah. But I'm not a bird, so I don't have a crop. So I grind them up in a coffee grinder.
All right. I'm going to open it up for questions from the audience. Both of them are amazing, I'd say, encyclopedias of information. Maybe we could have 2 or 3 questions together. The mic, please. Yeah.
So I personally think that there is no political will, especially in the current regime, I would call it regime and not whatever, politics, in India to protect nature. In fact, we are violating it in the name of progress, and unfortunately, most people applaud it. You know, nobody raises a voice and nobody questions. A naturalist once told me that animals don't have a voice. And since they don't have a voice, their basic needs are not being met. And what is their basic need? Is basically to just exist. And
Ma'am, the question, please.
no
Sorry.
question, I'm just commenting. And
Oh,
I
it's just a
want,
comment.
Yeah, and I want him to say something about it.
How
Would
would
you-
you,
yeah,
how
would
would
you
you
say some-
respond to that, Yuvan?
Yesterday, okay, right now on the southeast coast, there is a mass death of olive ridley sea turtles happening. Before coming here, I was actually counting sea turtle carcasses. In Andhra, more than 3,000. In Chennai, more than 1,200. And one of the things my partner and I saw was a certain sense of public apathy. There are these large turtles, bulge-eyed, stinking, eggs oozing out of their stomach, mothers which have come to lay eggs but have died from mechanized fishing. People are standing there. So there's a sort of a entitlement era which capitalism has created into us. And yesterday, Yogendra Yadav wrote a beautiful thing about how in the Delhi elections, air pollution is not featuring in anybody's manifesto. And that's because the public is not framing the issues which political parties pick up. When they do it, they pick it up. So I think part of this is about creating an active citizenry, which is involved and engaged. I don't know how we are trying to do that. I mean, so many of you are, of course, but yeah, that's my response.
Well, in Goa, they actually were protecting the turtles. They cleared all the people off the beaches. They won't allow any loud music at the moment. And
Absolutely.
the turtles are coming in and laying their eggs, and they're putting fences around them to stop people from damaging them.
Yeah, there is a strong movement in Goa. That's right. yeah.
We have a strong movement. The problem is the turtles are dying inside the sea and washing up. Law enforcement is very difficult in the open
sea,
ocean. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, the other questions, he will be signing his books. You could ask him there, right? Yeah.
All right. So my question is with regards to how you were mentioning that school systems and education systems can be redesigned to redesign the metaphors. However, when we hear about the Purans like the Ramayana, it features the Dandakaranya. And when we talk about Mahabharata, these talk about forest in a dangerous perspective. That is something to be feared of, like Hidimba coming from the Rakshasas. So the instinctive fear is like, if I see an ant, I should run away. If there is a forest, I run away. So how do we make those changes in the narratives, perhaps you could shed light?
That's an extraordinary question. We do a lot of walks and tours in Chennai. One of the things we are doing is we are making and collecting stories. In the Mahabharata, it's a wonderful text. I don't want to get into trouble, but the Rakshasas are Adivasis.
Yeah.
We grow up learning that people living in forests are monsters. That gets ingrained into us. You look at, for instance, Santal story, where God actually goes and asks the earthworm, listen, give me some mud. I don't know how to make the earth. Can you teach me? It's a sort of multi-species world making. Those are the kind of stories we need to hear. Yeah.
Yes, I spent some time in Jharkhand actually helping to record some of these Santal stories because these tribal people, they know everything about the environment around them, and they do no damage, they make no mess, they leave no trash, nothing. They are such nice people.
Yeah, it is peaceful coexistence, in large part, yeah.
And their identity is melded with the landscape. It's not that they're going there. They're not exhabiting, as Tim Ingold said. To quote the tribal elder Lado Sikaka from the Dongriakon tribal, who was fighting a mining company in the Niyamgiri Hills. He said, I'm not fighting for the mountain, I'm the mountain fighting for itself. Yeah. Yeah.
One more question?
Absolutely.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left for just one more question. Yeah, yeah. Take the mic and just the question straight. Yeah.
About having nutri gardens sort of in the schools, and I'm proud to say that I'm part of a project which we are working in the rural areas where we are establishing those nutri gardens in the schools, government schools. But my question is that when we ask the authorities, school authorities, to let the children do the work themselves, they were taken aback saying that the school children will not work because somebody would then report and will get into trouble, that we are making school children work. And also, the funder also raised this question that don't get into all this because we might get into trouble, saying that. So, are we looking down upon working with our own hands, or is it not a part of our culture anymore, because the children also didn't show any interest in working in the gardens whatsoever?
Good question. Angela, do you want to answer that?
I didn't quite understand.
He says that what you were talking about, getting, these gardens in schools.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're part of a movement where they're trying to do this in Rajasthan, in Jaipur itself. However, the authorities are saying, well, don't get the kids to work because there might be some objection. He said the children also are not showing interest in wanting. He said, are we looking down on working with our hands? I mean, I think there's a sensitization issue here. But it's not, you're not working, it's not labor.
But this is nothing
it's
to do.
therapeutic.
This is nothing to do with child labor.
Yeah.
Child labor is when you make children work for 16 hours a day.
Exactly.
In cutting diamonds or
This
something.
is part of their learning.
This is just participating in education for, half an hour after school, doing something that you really enjoy.
You should speak
This
to
is not
him
child
later and
labor.
ask him how he works out his schools.
No, we
Yeah.
work a lot with the government. When we face problems, we just wait for that official to get transferred and we smile.
Exactly, yeah.
Well done.